Hello there, my name is Jordan Leroy Hansen, also known as Live Death, and as promised, after the big reveal stream, I was going to review the rest of the cards that got revealed for the expansion. Starting with Warlock and Paladin cards, and then in the next few videos I'm going to try to cover the rest of the set since we had a lot of cards that got revealed. Nevertheless, let's start off with actually the Warlock class. Now, I was curious to see how Blizzard was going to approach designing cards for this set for Warlock, since they are still one of the higher power classes, especially even post-nerf with stuff like Q-Block and Control Warlock. And the approach they decided to go with it was actually focused more on Zoolock stuff. Like, you know, the classic Zoolock where you play a bunch of minions, you use the draw engine, and then play more minions, go for face, board control, try to win the game for that method. And you can tell that by the first card that they showed off, which is the Void Analysis. A 2-mana 2/2. Death Rattle, give all demons in your hand +1/+1. This is a card that I think is going to be more better post-rotation. And the main reason why I think that is because, thanks to Knights of the Frozen Throne in the Year of the Mammoth, we have Prince Kalisev. And the overall value that you can get from Prince Kalisev will be a lot more significant than the value you get from Void Analysis. Now, you could make an argument that if you have an even Warlock deck that is specifically focused on demon synergies, you might actually have more benefit from this card, especially if the majority of your deck is demon base. However, I still wonder if just Prince Kalisev is the better option. Who knows, it'll be just fun to experiment at the very least. It's a fine card. Not totally amazing, but I think it's a fine arena card at the very least, especially if your deck is demon-centric. Next up, a common for Warlock, the Demonic Project, a 2-mana spell. Each player transforms a random minion in their hand into a demon. Now, obviously this is a card that is posed to quote-unquote give Warlock the chance to hate out specific combo-based decks. The most popular one that people are thinking right off the bat is, obviously, it's an answer to the Shutterwalk decks, or even Malygos Druid and such. And does this get the job done? Possibly. I think it's one of those where, if those deck archetypes are still popular with the Boomsday expansion starting out, then I think Control Warlock will still just slide this in as a 1-of or a 2-of. But I think it's a card that's going to vary in value depending on how the expansion molds. Because, let's say Warlock is the popular archetype, and people didn't play Shutterwalk as like the second popular archetype. Shutterwalk decks might try to adapt and try to actually put more minions within their deck and to try to counteract this. It's a possibility. Even Malygos might try to do it, which then, at least at the very least, does break deck consistency, so that should be interesting. Overall, this is just a tech card, but I do say warn people because the demon pool is varied. Sometimes there's some very powerful demons, and hey, sometimes you can give your opponent a very weak demon. Just realize the only way you're using this is because it's a tech card, and be very, very cautious of the demons currently in the meta. That's all I can say about this card, to be honest. Another card to help encourage the Zoo Warlock type is the Doubling Imp. A 3-mana 2/2, Battlecry, summon a copy of this minion. So, obviously this is a card that tries to encourage the Void Analysis, as we mentioned earlier, and maybe even Prince Kalisev if people toy with that. However, this card is the epitome of just fine even on its base stats alone. Sure, it's not perfect being a 3-mana 4/4, but if a token-based dimming deck is a thing, they might actually consider this card. It's just one of those, the main con is, yeah, they're a bunch of 2/2s, but let's be frank, we all like the Tree Ant card, and this is just a minion variation of that card, just with demons, which is a lot more synergistic within the Warlock class. And if you find a way to buff this card up in your hand, using either Void Analysis or Prince Kalisev, perfect. Overall, it's a fine common. It's really not much to sneeze about. You just get 2 demons, which could be very synergistic to your overall deck design. It'll be interesting to see people toy with this card. Next up, it's Ectomancy, A 6-mana spell for Warlock. Summon copies of all demons you control. This will only work, I would say, in theory, is if that demon token deck, as I mentioned earlier with the previous, is a thing. Especially if there's a way to buff demons into token stuff. You could also make an argument that this card is actually very good to just get 2 copies of, say, your Void Lords, or maybe even have it for an OTK to get 2 copies of your Doom Guards because you cheap it out with, say, Possessed Lackey or such. But I think there are just more efficient ways to do that. I mean, Faceless Manipulator costs 1 less, and you're probably just going to get about as much burst damage as you do if you try to get away with this. Though, I still think this card is fascinating because there is potential applications. But I think it's one of those cards that I think it's going to see more experimentation once we get into the Nets expansion and such, and we get more demons in the pool that might have more synergistic values if you summon copies of them. It might see play in this meta, but I'm not 100% sure, especially with that price at being at 6 mana. Yeah, that price is pretty much what's killing this card. One fascinating card that Warlock's got, though, is the Nethersoul Buster. A 3-mana 1/5, Battlecry, gain 1 attack for each damage your hero has taken this turn. So, let's say you play this on turn 5. You first ping yourself with your hero power, dealing 2 damage to yourself, and you get a 3-mana 3/5. Stat-wise, that's fine. It's not amazing, but it's fine. But I think what most people are trying to think of with this card is if there's the possibility of a quote-unquote self-inflict Warlock-style deck where you deal a ton of damage and you do get benefit with the attack boost. And I think that's legitimately a possibility. I don't know if it's going to be competitively viable, but we do definitely have a lot of self-hurt cards for Warlock that's even from this expansion and even from previous expansions. Blood Broom is one thing I could think off the bat. I mean, the Kobolds and Catapults, 1 drop that every Warlock plays, the 2 Kobold Librarian. Warlock has a way to, other than their hero power, self-inflict damage on themselves, which can be very synergistic for this card. However, I think this card is going to be, weirdly enough, only beneficial if you can find a way to only deal 3 damage to yourself. I know that sounds weird, but hear me out on this. I think this card is actually a lot more beneficial as a 3-mana 4/5 than if you try to make this higher and such. I think there are going to be board states and circumstances where you want this at a high attack as soon as possible to try to finish out a game. But if you're playing this early off, which you probably don't want to, but you'll probably be playing this on turn 6 or something, I think it's a lot more better to help with board trades and such, and even just be sticky if it's a 4/5. Now, obviously, someone's probably going to troll in this and deal themselves almost to lethal damage, having 1 health, have this, I don't know, maybe 20, 18 attack and such. The opponent can't answer it, and they can't deal the final damage, and then they win based off that. But I think that's more of a Magical Christmas Land type of scenario. I still love the design outlet that this card is encouraging for deck design, but I do think it's a card you have to be very cautious and don't get into best case mentality. Or else you are going to hurt yourself a lot. I mean, literally, this card is telling you to hurt yourself a lot. Next up is actually another card in the Omega cycle that Warlock's got, which is the Omega Agent. A 5-mana 4/5, decent stats, but its Omega ability, which is its Battlecry, if you have 10 mana crystals, summon 2 copies of this minion. So, this one's pretty easy to answer. A 5-mana 4/5, it's decent stats, it's nothing you absolutely want to play on turn 5, unless you absolutely have to. I mean, it is sticky, it does help you with trades and such. Mostly, I think most people want to try to play with this card with the Omega, though, because summoning free 4/5s, that can easily help you with some very peculiar board states in the meta. The only one that I don't think it will help you with is if if Taunt Druid is still a thing within this current meta, because, well, free 4/5s doesn't help against 12, or, okay, I'm just joking with exaggeration there, more like 3 to 4 Primordial Drakes. And I'm still sad that I can't say that that's not an exaggeration. But still, I think this is a fine card, especially if a token Zoo Warlock deck is a thing. You won't mind playing this as a 4/5, it won't feel great, but I think most people are going to love when they top deck this as their card on turn 10. You'll play it if you want to, you'll cut it if you need to. Next up is a 1-mana Soul Infusion. Give the leftmost minion in your hand +2/+2. So, remember, keep in mind, in Hearthstone, your hand is fixed. So, whatever your leftmost minion is your leftmost minion. This card, I think it's decent in Zoolock, but I don't love it. It's one of those where this is a very varied card depending on how your deck is drawn and such and how you play the game overall. I mean, I think it's fine, but I'm not sure if it's amazing. I think it's a card that you will play if you absolutely need to help you get better board presence within the current meta. But why don't you just play better minions and then just hope you don't have to rely on the variance of a stat boost? Overall, I don't think this is a great card. I do think it's a fun card that I think some people with token-based decks might just toy with so that they can get, like, oh, 2 4/4 demons, or even with the Omega Agent, get, like, free 5/7s and such. It's... oh, no, 6/7s, sorry, that was a brain fart there. Overall, though, I think this is a bad card. It'll be interesting to see if somebody can get away with it, but I can't see it, if I'm being quite frankly honest. Next up is the 2-mana Spirit Bomb, and it has one simple ability. Deal 4 damage to a minion at the cost of dealing 4 damage to you, the hero. Honestly, this card is great. I know there's some people that look at this card and they're like, well, why don't you just play Shadow Bolt? It's free mana, but you deal 4 damage, and you don't have to worry about being dealt by yourself. Well, obviously, the mana cost reduction is one thing that makes this card a little bit better. Plus, with Even Warlock being a thing, thanks to the Witchwood trying to encourage even and odd decks, this gives a tool for Even Warlocks for early game removal. And trust me, knowing the meta with mid-range decks and such, there is some minions that Warlock would not mind dealing 4 damage to themselves to get rid of right off the bat. Vicious Fledgling, anybody? Overall, this one's pretty easy to say. It's a great card. You'll play it if you need to. If you're more a slow-paced deck that are not relying on pain synergies, sure, play the Shadow Bolt. But this is a great tool that Warlock got, especially for Even Warlock. Next up is the legendary spell that Warlock got, and boy is it a doozy. It's the 1-mana, the Solarium, and it's a simple spell that does one simple thing. Draw 3 cards. At the end of your turn, you discard the cards. This is really, 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 really good. I mean, Warlock is just used to having to draw 1 card each turn with their hero power. This is absurd in Zoolock decks. If you ask them if they can have a way to refill their hand so that they can play more minions out on, like, later in the game when their hands get a lot more emptier, they will play this card in a heartbeat. Now, this might not see much play in control decks. That's a legitimate maybe, because that discard effect is very costly. I mean, nobody really wants to discard their Gul'dan, to be quite frankly honest. The Death Knight Gul'dan, to be more specific. But most people who play Hearthstone do play with deck trackers and such, and I think they'll be aware when they can draw cards and hope to not be at the cost benefit of discarding cards that they think would be beneficial to their overall game strategy. So I think it's still a possibility in Control Warlock, but it is one you have to be very knowledgeable of your deck list, or at least have it present in your face before you use it in that deck archetype. Mostly, though, one of the ones that is the thought that right off the bat is, will this see play in discard Quest Warlock? Maybe. I think this is more memey if you try to play it in Quest Warlock, because we're in like current meta, especially with the mech uprising. Oh, trust me, once we get to the normal card reviews, we have a lot of mechs to review. I think the reward that Warlocks get of just being like, oh, we can summon a bunch of 3/2 demons, that's not going to help you against the current mech overlords, let me put it like that. So, honestly, I think you're just playing this because it's a great draw engine in Zoolock, and it might even see some decent play in Control, as long as they can read their deck very easily. And next up, the last card for Warlock before we move on to Paladin, Dr. Morgan. An 8-mana 5/5 with a Death Rattle, swap this with a minion from your deck. Okay, there's some people that when they first seen this card, they thought that this was going to be the worst legendary in the expansion. I can guarantee you from seeing the full set, this is not the worst legendary. Trust me, there's one actually in normal, the neutral cards once we get to it, that is pretty bad. We'll get to it once we get to it, but I think most people when they look at this card, they just look at the stats and they're like, why would I spend 8 mana for a 5/5? Without realizing that that Death Rattle is actually really beneficial. As long as it doesn't get silenced, keep that in mind. But a minion that, for the most part, can't technically die, and as long as you have minions in your deck, actually pulls the minions out and play, so you don't have to play them, so you can save your mana for other stuff. That's actually very mathematically efficient, which is kind of ironic, since actually the story behind this gal in the lore is actually she was once a mathematician, so hey, little joke there. But I think this is one of those cards where I don't think it's going to be horrible to play with, especially in minion-centric decks. I mean, there's hopefully people... I would say the cautious thing with this card, I would not play this if you are very reliant on Battlecry minions, because pulling out one of your Battlecries that you might think is really necessary for your overall game plan will feel really bad if you pull it from this. But on the other side of the coin, there is some cards that if you pull it out and then ignores the Battlecry, is not actually bad. Charging Devasaur is obviously the card I'm referring to on that one. Overall, though, I think this card is just fine. I mean, it's not amazing. It's not one of the more flashy legendaries that the expansion has, but I think this is the epiphany of a practical legendary. If your deck design needs it, you'll play with it. If your deck design doesn't need it, you probably won't play with it and maybe just craft it for dust to get an epic you need or something. Or if this is one of the golden legendaries you pull, well, hey, at least you get a free legendary from this expansion. Honestly. Next up, we're going to cover the Paladin cards in this set, starting off with Crystology, a 2-mana spell. Draw 2 1-attack minions from your deck. Now, when I first looked at this card, I kind of thought this card was bad, because I was thinking, wait, why would I want to draw 2... Why would I spend 2 mana just to get 2 1-cost minions from the deck? Like, get your 2, say, for example, Dire Moles or something. I was looking at that perspective. That was before I forgot, oh wait, there's actually a lot of powerful free-cost minions with 1 attack. Tar Creeper, Total Trailblazer, etc., etc., etc. So, overall, this was an easy one to say. It's a fine card. If you have any of the valuable free-cost, 1-cost minions, it's a card you'll play. But I do think you have to be very cautious how your mana distribution is, because if you have more like early game 1-cost minions, I mean, you could make the argument that drawing those out using the spell is better than trying to draw it from a top deck, but I think this is one of those cards where an average curve will be like, they play this and they hope they get a Tar Creeper. But it'll be interesting to see this card within the meta. I'll have some fun with it, I'll say that. Next up is a new secret for Paladin, which is the Auto Defense Matrix. It's a secret that it triggers when one of your minions is attacked, and it gives that minion that is attacked Divine Shield. This is just a fine secret. I think if Secret Paladin is a thing, or if there is a Paladin deck that does rely on its secret strategies, such as anyone that use quote-unquote Subject 9, I think this is a card they will actually play a lot, because this is just another trick that Paladins have to make it where opponents are going to be very, very cautious when they trade their minions in. It makes the math a little bit complicated, especially they don't want to end up getting screwed by trading in one of their higher value minions, presuming that it's going to kill the other minion, but it doesn't, and then they get dealt the damage, and then it leaves you to have more efficient trading and such. So, this one's just pretty easy. This is just a fine secret. You'll play it if you need secrets within your deck design, but if you don't, you don't. Next up is the Annoyo module, a 4-mana 2/4 magnetic mech that has Divine Shield and Taunt, and it's a 2/4. So, this is obviously the older brother of the Annoyotron, obviously. So, is this card good? It depends on how you look at it. I think playing this as a 4-mana 2/4 is fine. It's not amazing. It's one of those where it will help you to at least stay defensive for a teeny little bit. I do think this is a lot more better, though, with the Magnetic Claws, because when you look at it as giving one of your following mechs, a 2 attack, 4 toughness boot, and thanks to the Divine Shield, and it will help you actually trade and not lose the health, and hey, it's going to have taunt, so then you actually be on the defensive, then that's when this card is actually really, really good. I think this card will see play in the meta, especially with the mech decks. Mechs are going to be a thing. Just trust me about that right off the bat. Mechs are going to be a thing. And I think this will be a fine card in a Mech Paladin deck. Next up is the 5-mana Shrinkway! And it sets the attack and health of all minions, yours including, and the enemies, to 1. Honestly, I think there's only 1, maybe 2 decks that want this card. The one deck that I think this card will shine in is Egg Paladin. Egg Paladin actually savors this card, because it actually sets their eggs, which are usually at 0, to 1 attack. So, let's say they play their eggs out, the opponent plays a very competitive board state, they play Shrinkray, they can trade the minions, their egg minions, into the more threatening minions of the opponent, and they will be gone because everything's set to 1/1, and then they're still going to be left with a better board state because the Death Rattle triggers, and hey, they get dinosaurs, or a giant robot dinosaur, which we're going to talk about that egg when we get to it. Overall, you could make an argument for Control Paladin, but honestly, I think Equality is just way better than Shrinkray. It might be a case where they might just do, if they play with this card, it might just be as a one-of to help them against some peculiar board states, but even then, I'm kind of, Overall, this is a funny card. It's definitely going to see its play in Egg Paladin. I'm just going to promise you that without a sweat. But it might see some play in Control Paladin, but the keyword is might. Next up is one of the more peculiar Paladin cards that came from this set, and it's the Prismatic Lens. It's a 4-mana spell that allows you to draw a minion and a spell from your deck, and you swap their cost. Now, most people are kind of thinking extreme case scenarios with this card, such as, you play a very heavy secret heavy deck, then you only have late game minions like Deathreen, so you can get like a 1-mana Deathreen! Even though that it comes at the cost of having a 12-mana secret that's pretty much a dead card in your hand. Or a 10-cost spell, but you get what I'm saying. Honestly, I think the more better use of this card is actually cheaping the cost out of some very specific minions and some very specific spells. Specifically, if Heal Paladin is a thing. Like, for example, one thing I could think of is, say, Happy Ghoul, and then Lay on Hands. Let's say you draw the Happy Ghoul, and you draw on the Lay on Hands, they swap their costs. Hey, you have a free mana Lay on Hands, which then essentially is very beneficial. Sure, the 8-mana Happy Ghoul is not going to be fun, but hey, Lay on hands heal you, so then that happy goal is going to become 0. Honestly, I think that's where the main power of this card is going to lie, because there are minions in Hearthstone where, through some very specific methods of how you interact on the field or how you play cards, can reduce the cost to automatically 0. And I think if a toolbox or even a healing control paladin deck might actually rely on Prismatic Lens just for that nifty little trick. But other than that, it'll be interesting to see how this card goes. I don't know if this is going to make like Big Paladin a thing, but I do think there's some really clever little tricks that you can actually do once you kind of realize how mana alteration in Hearthstone works and such. Speaking of the eggs, as we were talking about earlier, here's Paladin's Egg, the 5 mana Mechano Egg. It's 0/5 mech, and has the Death Rattle, summon an 8/8 Robosaurus. This guy's really good. Egg Paladin is a thing, and I think they will not mind this egg. Now, people have been arguing about this card because they think the high toughness will be a little bit hard to deal with, but oh hey, we have Shrink Ray and such, so that's going to help out. Plus, there are also ways that people are like, well, eggs are more popular in other classes because they have easier ways to trigger the death rattles. Though let's be frank, every class, as long as they have access to Cube, pretty much have access way to activate their death rattles. Let's not kid ourselves, okay? I think this card is really good. You're going to play it in a very specific deck, and also it's a mech, so it actually synergizes with Magnetic, so you can make it very complicated for the opponent to play with this card and not ignore it. You can add an attack boost on it, make an efficient trade. You can also make it have taunt, so players, the opponent will have to attack into it, and then give you the 8/8 Robosaurus. This is just a fine card. This is a really good common. Don't sleep on this card. This card is very, very powerful in the right decks. Next up is one of the more nostalgic cards that the Paladin got, which is the Glowstone Technician. It's a 6 mana free 4. Give all minions in your hand +2/+2. Honestly, I think this is fine. I think most people are looking at this card and they think, why would I play this card? Hand Paladin's not really a thing anymore. But Even Paladin is a thing. And most people forget that Even Paladin has ways that they add minions into their hand. And they would not mind having Glowstone Technician played and then have like the Silver Hand recruits that they added to their hands through alternative means become free freeze. I legitimately think this card is probably one of the more underrated cards in Paladin. I would not sleep on this card. This card might actually pull some more tricks than you think. I'm just going to say that right off the bat, because that stat boost to all of your minions in your hand, in Even Paladin, it's kind of absurd. Next up, a really good common that actually Paladin got, and nobody's sleeping on this card, the Glowtron. It's a 1 mana 1 free, it's a mech, and it's magnetic. Now, this is probably not the most flashiest magnetic mech, like we have stuff like Zilliats and such, but this card is really, really, really good. Playing this on turn 1 to help you with trades from the early game is good. Oh, it's a mech, so it actually can synergize by magnetic minions you have in your deck, so you can actually make this minion grow. And it's also magnetic itself, so if you draw it late game, it might not feel as bad, because it might actually help you save a minion in a trade. Yeah, this card is just... it's really, really, really good. This will see play in Paladin. Like, mech decks are going to be a thing. You're going to be hearing me say it like a broken record. Mech decks are going to be a thing. And this card complements a Paladin mech deck. No sweateroni to the pepperoni. So, don't sleep on this common. This common is amazing. Next up is the legendary scientist that Paladin got, which is the Crystal Smith Kangar. A 2 mana 1/2 with Divine Shield and Lifesteal, and it has the ability that all your healing is doubled. healing from your minions, healing from your spells. No matter the case, it's going to be doubled. This is just fine. I mean, yeah, there are moments where this might be a dead draw, but if Healing Paladin is going to be a thing, it's going to be relying on the back of this card. Plus, also playing this early game and not taking advantage of the healing aspect of it, it's fine as well, because it's a 2-mana 1/2. It's just has a Divine Shield, it will help with trades and such. There are many people that are kind of making the joke that they're kind of surprised that this isn't a mech, because, oh hey, a Crystal Golem, ain't that technically a mech? Yeah, we can make that joke, but let's be honest, this would be kind of busted if it was a mech. Let's be quite frankly honest. Let's not kid ourselves, guys. Overall, this is a fine legendary for Paladin. It will, most likely, if a control healing Paladin is a thing, it will see play. But I can also see it seeing play in even a mid-range mech Paladin, even if it's not a mech itself, because, well, there are minions that heal other minions and such, so yeah, I don't mind my minions being healed double, especially if it helps them with efficient trading. So, overall, fine legendary that Paladin got. It's a really good legendary. Yeah, that's really all I can say. It's just really, really good. Last up for Paladin, it's the legendary spell they got, and it's Kangor's Endless Army. A 7-mana legendary spell, resurrect free friendly mechs. They keep any magnetic upgrades. This is really good if mid-range Paladin mechs are a thing, which I think it's possibly a thing. I think the main weakness of this card, though, is I think the more popular Paladin archetypes that are using the mech strategies are going to be more zoo decks. And this card will feel kind of awkward when you play it in a zoo mech deck, because they're going to be playing a bunch of mechs out. Some of them are going to be cheap costs, some of them they will be able to magnetize, some of them they won't be able to magnetize. And when you're spending 7 mana to only resurrect free mechs, you want to make sure that they're very buffed up mechs and such, and there's just a possibility where this could just summon a 1/1 if you're playing the quote-unquote zoo mech deck. However, if there is some type of a mid-range Paladin deck that relies a little bit on the mech sub-strategy, like they only have, say, specifically 3 to 4 or maybe even 5 mechs that they're just going to buff, and they are going to try to make them strong enough for the late game to play into this card, then this card's just awesome. Like, it's one of those where bringing back a very powerful mech and 3 of them can help make very potentially awkward board states for your opponent. Overall, I think this is a great legendary, but you do need to brew your deck around this. You don't want to just cram this into any mech deck and just hope that you don't get free 1/1s. You have to make sure that you can build into this card. Keep that in mind. And overall, that's my review of the Warlock and Paladin cards for the Boomsday project. Next up, it's going to be a long one. We're going to be catching up with all the cards that have been revealed. And boy, I can't wait to talk about the mechs in this expansion. Guys, mechs are real. There's a ton of really, really good mechs, and I can't wait to start talking about them. Overall, I hope you have a lovely day. Can't wait for this to go off. And also, one quick little announcement. I am actually going to plan to stream the Boomsday project at launch. I'll get details on when the stream's going to happen and all that stuff pretty soon. I'm still kind of like getting the final details of it out and such. Overall, I hope we all have fun. And this is going to be a fun set, just from what I've seen so far. I hope you all have a lovely day. This is LevDev, signing out.